Friday, October 10th, 2025. You're listening and watching The Gabby Gordon Show. My name is Gabby Gordon. I am your host. We have so much to talk about today. So much news. Postseason, NFL, New York sports is like the weirdest thing right now. And to talk about it all, I am so excited to reunite with one of my former fellow ESPN New York interns. If you are new to the podcast and you don't know who I am, I'm Gabby Gordon again, and I, over the summer, interned at ESPN New York in the city. We had a great internship group, and one of these people who you're about to see pop up on your screen was part of that group. He's now a graduate student at Virginia Tech, and I'm going to welcome to the stage Mr. Connor Levinson. Connor, it is so good to see you.
Gabby, how are you doing? It is so good to be on.
We've been planning this for a very long time. We mentioned this.
It's been a long time coming. This has been something that we've been planning since the summer.
Right. We talked about it in the summer, and we were like at the very end of the internship. And I'm trying to get everybody on from the intern class too, one way or another. They're already commenting on the special guest post. I don't know if you saw it. Jack was like,
"Of course I saw it."
This was legendary. Lily's going to be tuning in. It's awesome. But how is everything with school? How has your life been since the internship?
My life has been great. And let me tell you, this Friday, today on this Victory Friday, this New York Giants Victory Friday, it is a beautiful day to be here, to be a New York sports fan. You asked me 24 hours ago, I would tell you that I was in the worst place in my life where the Yankees lost. But on this Victory Friday, it's okay. It cancels it out. It's fine. We're enjoying the Friday. We're getting ready for the weekend. We have that New York Giants victory, and it's just that much more sweet that it was against those awful Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, so you're looking at it right now, 34-17 final score. Now, I'm going to be transparent here and say, and I'm sure you're in the survivor pool with ESPN, correct?
I am.
So I took the Eagles this week because who in their right mind would have gone into this game thinking the Giants were going to do what they did?
Not me, especially not after last week. Watching us against the Saints was like, getting your heart ripped out of your chest, right? You watched Jackson Dart play great against the Chargers. Going into this Saints game, Saints were favored, I think, leading into Sunday. I was like, how are they favored? There's no possible way they're going to win. Jackson Dart is the future. This is going to be great. And we just went out there and looked awful. And I was fully expecting that this week we were going to come in and get destroyed by the Eagles. I know Saquon wasn't fully healthy going into the night. I know they didn't have Jalen Carter. I was ready to get destroyed. And I sat down on my couch last night and I savored every single second of that victory.
It was insane. And I mean, it was really from the get-go too, where they just jumped on it. And listen, say what you want about the Eagles. They've been able to do it and stay consistent and success. But now the last two games, they have not looked good.
Not at all. And Jalen Hurts has looked really, really, really bad. And, the longer this goes, the more concerned I get about this team culture. You got a guy in A.J. Brown who needs the ball. He needs it. And let me tell you, for my fantasy football team, I need him to get it too. But it's been a rough go for him and Devonta Smith to get that football. Jalen Hurts has not looked good. Saquon Barkley is supposedly banged up. He looked awful last night, and it's concerning to see where this Eagle team is going, especially after a great season last season and high expectations. I don't know.
Well, and listen, I mean, when Jackson Dart came into the picture and started and had Malik Neighbors, you could say, oh, this is pretty sustainable. Like, this kid's got something. I really do think, and now I was on the end of saying it's a little too premature to start Dart because you're putting him in a situation where he's inevitably going to fail, and then that can ruin a young quarterback's career. But I was really one of the few people that felt that way. Many people were very like, it's time to flip the page and start fresh. I think the Giants truly have something with him. And that's to say without your best player in Malik Neighbors.
I fully agree. I think the situation that he was getting put in, I didn't think there was any possible way that they could come out with a win here, right? They were entering the toughest part of their schedule. You were looking at seeing the Eagles twice in 3 weeks. You had the Broncos, you had the Chargers, you play the 49ers. Like, you were looking at a really tough stretch of games. And I was concerned that they were going to throw him in there and he was just going to get destroyed, and it was going to take a hit to his confidence, all of that. And it was worrying. And I wasn't sure that this was the right choice to make. Putting him in the Chargers game, he looked good. Malik Neighbors goes down and you think that's it, right? You go into the Saints game, you have no wide receiver help. You got you guys dropping the football left and right. And I was like, okay, this is the way it's going to be. He's going to get, banged up all season. He's going to have no help. We activated little Jordan Humphreys off of the practice squad last night. And I was like, oh no, this is going to be, a massacre.
Yeah.
And he outperformed every expectation I have. He looked great. He was making smart decisions with the football. And that's all you can ask for, right? There's going to be growing pains. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to throw interceptions. He's going to fumble the football. It's going to happen. He's a rookie. But to see him make those smart decisions, to see him look as comfortable as he did on that field was A, great to see, but B, it gave me something as a Giant that I haven't had in years, and that's hope. And it made me very excited for the future. And I mean, MetLife has basically been a ghost town because I think they talked about it last night on the broadcast. The last 5+ years, the Giants have had the second worst record in the NFL. The only team that has a worse record is the Jets. So MetLife has really been like this house of horrors for New York football teams. And last night was the first time in a long time where I've truly felt hope. And, Jackson Dart gets a ton of credit for this. Cam Skattebo needs just as much credit. Cam
100%.
Skattebo was fantastic last night. I love watching that man run the football. And behind an offensive line that, frankly, has not been that great this year, he looked fantastic. And I think that all has to do with the fact that Andrew Thomas is finally healthy again. And having that anchor point on the offensive line has allowed us to really have a RPO offense with Jackson Dart, with Cam Skattebo, and apparently now with Wan'Dale Robinson, who has come out to be this fantastic wide receiver one.
Yeah, I mean, because you lose Neighbors and then Darius Slayton, whatever's been going on with him, and now he's hurt, not playing as well. So you don't have any weapons for this kid to throw to. You have to rely on the running game. You have to rely on the offensive line. And now I think there's pieces that are emerging that I don't even think the Giants really knew that they had. Like Cam Skattebo, we knew what he was capable of. And he's like the type of guy that he's just going to run through a brick wall every single time. And that's sometimes what you need. You need two young guys who are willing to go above and beyond for the team. What's interesting to me now is I feel like coming into this game, Brian Daboll's in a very, very hot seat. Do Giants fans, or I guess in general, does it still look like that? Do you think he's still in the hot seat?
So I think his seat is still warm. I don't think it's a hot seat necessarily anymore, but I think his seat is still warm. I think if Jackson Dart continues to play the way that he is, even if it's not at the high level that it was last night, but he's playing on a consistently good level for the rest of the season, I think that buys Brian Daboll at least another year, right? He finally gets to draft his guy. He finally gets to mold his quarterback, right? This is the whole reason why we brought him in, was he was the one that apparently developed Josh Allen into what he is. And Giants fans were fully expecting that, but Daniel Jones just apparently wasn't his guy, which, by the way, we don't need to talk about that, but Daniel Jones looking great on the Indianapolis Colts just hurts my soul every week.
Also my current fantasy football quarterback, because, Joe Burrow goes down. So, but that's besides the point.
But regardless, I think that Jackson Dart playing well is going to buy Brian Daboll more time, right? He's going to get the chance to now develop his guy and mold Jackson Dart into whatever quarterback he's going to end up being, right? So even if the Giants win, I had the schedule in front of me, maybe 2, if not 3 more games the rest of the season, right? But if we are competitive throughout the rest of the year, I think that buys Brian Daboll at least a year, if not 2 more after this, to really develop Jackson Dart.
Yeah, and listen, you look at the schedule. What do you think this team should be right now? Because I honestly think they should have 2-3 more wins than they do.
I mean, I think if you started Jackson Dart from the beginning of the year, I don't know if it would look like this necessarily, but if he was to come out from game one looking like this, I think you probably have another win or two on the schedule. I think you beat the Cowboys. I
Yeah.
think that you potentially beat the Commanders in the first game of the season, right? Like I think the season could definitely look different, but I also wonder if the reason why it looks like it does now is because of the fact that it looks so bad with Russell Wilson, right? And you had such an anger from the fans and just a true like buyout from the players, right? I think that I was listening to DPH on Rothenberg this morning. Shout out Rick and Dave. But they were discussing the fact that it seems like Jackson Dart has gotten these guys to buy in. And I think that's the biggest thing is the team is now fully bought in, right? All of these guys on defense, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, they're bought in now, right? This guy brought energy that Russell Wilson wasn't. And I don't know if you start Jackson Dart from week one, if that happens necessarily, but I'm really excited to see where the rest of the season goes and how he looks come the end of his first year.
Right, because you look at the rest of the schedule, and I have it pulled up. So it's the Broncos next Sunday. That's going to be a tough matchup, Broncos defense, and you know, Bo Nix has looked pretty solid, especially last week. He looked pretty good. Then you play the Eagles again. I think it would be a lot to take 2 games from the Eagles because I think that they are going to bounce back. But then again, this last night, it wasn't a close game. I mean, the Giants had up right here, like 34-17. That's not like a field goal win in the game on a costly penalty or a costly, you know, play from the Eagles. No, the Giants dominated this entire game, and Nick Sirianni was beside himself on the sidelines. So you could make the argument that maybe they lose to the Broncos and then they beat the Eagles again. I could see them beating the 49ers. I could see them beating the Bears.
I think it all depends on what you're going to get from the offense, right? I think we know what the Giants defense is. They have been consistent across the board outside of the Cowboys game. Like we know what you're going to get, you know, they're going to give up 21 to 27 points a game. They're going to be solid. They're going to be good. It depends on what offense you see, right? Are you going to see the offense you saw in the Saints game, or are you going to see the offense you saw last night? And depending on how Jackson Dart plays, how well the offensive line looks, will all depend on the outcome of these games. Because you could very easily see a regression back into what we saw in the Saints game, and you could easily lose the next 6 games in a row.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it depends, but I'm taking it week by week, and I'm happy that the Giants have given me hope again. You know, it's nice to see, and you know, it's good to see, you know, New York sports have some energy again and have some life, especially with the way that it's been with almost every New York sports team outside of maybe the Knicks for the last couple of years.
New York sports has been, I mean, usually New York sports was the place to be. You know, if you weren't a New York sports fan, you were not succeeding. But now you've got the Mets who missed the playoffs, which I haven't even really talked about on this podcast because that was like the ultimate disaster in New York. I mean, what the Mets having the best record and then just imploding completely, and the amount of money that they spent coming into this season. So you have that. Then you have the Yankees, who we'll get to in a little bit. And you got the Rangers, who I don't even know what spot the Rangers are in right now. Like Jalen Brunson may be the only hope right now for New York sports teams to bring a title back to the city. But then the same token goes like maybe now it's Jackson Dart era.
And I'm looking forward to seeing how whatever this season ends up being for the Giants. I'm excited to look to see how we build off of it come the offseason, right? I think you need to improve your corners, improve your safeties, improve the offensive line, right? Now you finally, you know, have this opportunity to build around Jackson Dart. So I would implore Giants front office to go after those guys and really give Jackson Dart everything that he needs to succeed, right? You know, I think we're taking a step in the right direction, but I think there's still a long way to go before we see the Giants be a truly competitive team. But it all starts with, you know, how do we improve from this season, right? What does this offseason look like after whatever the record ends up being? And they've proved in the past that they necessarily can't do that. So looking to see, you know, can they get those offensive line pieces to help? We've been building this offensive line for 5 years and it still stinks, right? Can we get corners and safeties that truly can be lockdown guys, because we don't have that right now. We had it with Xavier McKinney, and then we let him walk to your team. So, can we get those guys, and then can we keep them, right? So, hopefully we're able to not have Dexter Lawrence opt out and try to go to another team, right? Trade Kayvon Thibodeau maybe for another piece, have Abdul Carter, grow into what we're expecting from him, because, frankly, there's been a lot of talk about how good Jackson Dart is, but Abdul Carter has not been that good this year.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because of the injuries and they've been moving him between defensive end and linebacker, whatever it is, the hype around him this offseason and what he's produced on the field so far has not been the same.
Yeah, because what you had with Eli Manning and what you had with Daniel Jones and now what you have with Jackson Dart are so different. Like, Daniel Jones wasn't like this athletic scramble out of the pocket type of quarterback. I think he's gotten much better in that respect now, especially in Indy, but he wasn't that type of quarterback. I mean, watching him scramble was painful in New York sometimes. And that, I mean that with the most respect what's like possible, because it looks a lot better now. So obviously that's something, a part of his game he's worked on. Jackson Dart's an athletic young kid. He can make plays, he can extend them, and he looks fairly comfortable. He's got to learn how to slide a little bit more because it gets a little scary at points. But at this point now, it's on the front office to not fail him. Like you said, you have to put pieces around him to succeed, because he still does not have the tools needed to really go out there and win. But he's doing a good job with what he has, and that just, you have to feel good if you're a Giants fan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, we talk about the hot seat with Brian Daboll and all that. And I think, giving Giants fans hope, I think that's, at this point, that's all they can ask for. And, Brian Daboll looking to keep his job, you keep giving Giants fans something to look forward to, something to cheer for, and that seat gets a lot colder.
So we're going to talk about a team now that maybe the hope is dwindling. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but maybe the hope is dwindling. Now, I always talk on this show how we're unbiased here and whatnot, but the two people you're looking at on your screen right now are both Yankees fans. And so we have perspectives from, fan standpoint, and then, of course, just looking at the facts. Now, we did get news today that Cody Bellinger is opting out. He is going to be a free agent. What does this necessarily mean? And we'll jump into the series itself, the divisional series that they lost, and just how the Blue Jays were the better team by far. But this is news in itself, and he did not have a good postseason. So what does this mean?
I think this is not necessarily a surprise. I think, while he did not have the best postseason, he did have one of his better offensive seasons this year with the Yankees. So I don't fault him for testing out the waters in free agency. He's going to be looking for a longer contract than a year. I can see the Yankees re-signing him. I think he would love to be a Yankee. I think the Yankees would love to have him. I would love to have him. But I think after what was one of the more disappointing series and one of the more disappointing postseasons from the team as a whole, this is not a surprise to see. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of other teams that are going to be bidding for him. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Yankees decide to reconstruct this outfield moving into next year. You have a lot of moving pieces. You have a lot of guys, Grisham, Bellinger, who are going to be testing out the waters in free agency, right? So who do you bring back? What do you do? Kyle Tucker will be a free agent at the end of this year. Yep. How do you build this outfield around Aaron Judge come next year? And I think it's going to be interesting to see.
Right, because it's so disappointing to see them go down like this. Because you had to go into the season thinking if you don't make the World Series again, it's a failure. Because last season's team was so talented. I would even argue that maybe this season's team at points was more talented and had less holes in regards to their lineup. And they had more speed. They had more. They got the Cody Bellinger edition, right? You got the Ryan McMahon defensive edition where they didn't have a third baseman for quite some time, a bona fide third baseman really since, I don't know, Gio Urshela, right? Where they were just having guys fill positions. Jazz played third. There was like a DJ LeMahieu third base saga at one point, and it was like, I think holes were filled. I do give credit to Brian Cashman for filling some of those holes, especially in the bullpen. But then again, like the bullpen struggled a ton come postseason. I think while you fill holes, you start to open up more. And that seems to be something that has been a reoccurring theme with the Yankees. And there were so many questions coming into this postseason about what's Aaron Judge going to do? What's he going to, is he clutch? Is he really going to step up? Is he going to beat the postseason allegations? And he did for a majority of the time. I mean, I would say against the Red Sox and a little bit into the Toronto series, they weren't impactful hits for the most part. He had 2 RBIs, I think, coming into the second game or third game. But he had base hits, and I think he was batting like over 500 in the postseason. And then you have nothing to show for it.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, what we've seen in years past is that one player can't necessarily carry an entire team.
That's correct.
And he tried to do that this postseason, but when the rest of your team is batting under, I think it was under like 220 for the postseason, it's not going to happen. And I think I would almost argue that this was a more disappointing postseason than last year for me.
I would agree.
Mostly because, I had, even going into the series, I was like, there is no way the Blue Jays are a better baseball team than we are. And coming out of the series,
they absolutely are.
Eat my words. They are a far superior baseball team. They are built for the postseason. I was talking with my roommate the other day, and we were talking about something that was said on John Boy, where they were talking about that the Blue Jays were built to go 12 rounds, right? They were built for that endurance, built for that distance, and the Yankees were not. The Yankees were built to go 2 rounds, take one big swing, and if it misses and they don't knock you out, that's it. They're done. And it feels like this has been something that's been built into the organization, I think almost ever since we signed Giancarlo Stanton, where it was like we were built for these like big punches, short-term swings, and it was like if it doesn't connect, then it's unfortunate, but that's what's going to happen. And you talk about plugging the holes, and they did a good job at plugging the holes, but it felt like it was like almost too little, too late. You're picking up a third baseman at the trade deadline when you should have had one to start the season. You got rid of one of your best prospects in Durbin, who went to the Brewers, for Devin Williams, who was up until the last couple of games in the postseason awful.
Brutal.
He had his worst year of all time, and I'll give him a pass because you're going from a place in Milwaukee to New York, which is one of the, if not the biggest sports market in the U.S. So I'll give him a pass. He seemed to settle in at the end of the year. He seemed to settle in the playoffs. I personally would not mind if he returned to the Yankees next year, but it was frustrating to see like them almost try to bandage up some of the holes. And, at the deadline, they went and got a million relievers. And outside of Bednar, it feels like nothing else really worked. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with all of these guys leaving. I think I saw there's 11 players that could be free agents this year. And so, it's frustrating because it feels like I am just living the same reoccurring nightmare as a Yankees fan over and over and over again. It literally feels like every year is exactly the same. And Judge probably has maybe 3 more years left in his prime, if that. And, I don't know if he's going to get a ring, to be honest with you. It feels like, we just, every year it seems like it's an organizational failure to address mistakes that were made in years prior ahead of time. And then it's too little too late. And it's unfortunate. And then it leads to what happened this year.
Yeah. And again, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. I'm going to bring this up here. I want to add this to the conversation. So this is Aaron Boone in his time as the Yankees manager. So 2018, he loses the ALDS. 2019, step further, loses the ALCS. Then you take a regression in 2020, ALDS, that was a COVID year. What are you going to, say what you want about the COVID year? I give that one a pass. Then 2021, you lose the wild card. So now we're progressively going down, but then you bump back up in 22 with the ALCS. And then 2023, that season, missing the playoffs completely. So at that point, you're like, well, I don't know. Boone should be out of a job in 2023 potentially because you've got since 2018 now, and you've swung and missed, pun intended, every single time. And last season, I think he saves himself, makes it to the World Series. There's very little chance that you're going to fire a World Series manager at that point, even the way they lost. But then this season you come back, and we've talked about without a World Series appearance again, it feels like a colossal failure. And this time, they don't get past the divisional series. They barely got past the wild card series against Boston. So the question that's been up in the air for, I would argue, since 2023, maybe even 2022, if you want to go that far, is, and then they just extended him a year or two ago, is Aaron Boone going to go? I think this is the biggest question in the postseason for the MLB. One of the biggest questions is, what are they going to do with Aaron Boone?
And I think he probably should have been gone in 2021 when you lost that wild card series. I think we got the opportunity this summer to go on DHR and share our thoughts about the Yankees. The question that they asked you and I was, who's to blame for this, right? Where does the blame come from? Do you blame Hal? Do you blame Brian Cashman? Do you blame Aaron Boone? Who is it? And I think that this is a top-down organization problem.
I agree.
And I think the only way that Boone goes is if Cashman goes. And the only way if Cashman goes is if Hal decides that he wants to change the way that this club is run. And unfortunately, they're making money. They make the playoffs almost every year. They have a above 500 record every year for the last 30 years. So unless something catastrophic happens where they finish under 500, they miss the playoffs, it is just an awful year, they're comfortable. It works. They make the playoffs every year. They're competitive every year. And they love to use the phrase, the playoffs are a crapshoot. That's their favorite thing to say. The playoffs are a crapshoot. Every year. Every team makes it. They have a chance. Guess what? The Dodgers are probably going to win the World Series again this year. You know what that means? It's not a crapshoot. And you know why they're going to win the World Series? Because they spent an insane amount of money collecting the best players in baseball to build a well-rounded, well-run roster. And so I think that flies directly in the face of saying the playoffs are a crapshoot. And I think until this organization decides to look at the way that this game is played differently, I think we will be stuck in the same cycle over and over and over again. They flashed it in Game 4 on the TV. This is the second longest streak the Yankees have gone without winning a World Series. They're a year away from being tied with the second longest and 3 years off from being tied with the worst. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they break that. If they go coming up on 20 years, if they go 3-4 more seasons without winning, hit 20 years without winning a World Series, I wouldn't be surprised. Unless there's a change in this organization, I don't see it happening. There's far too many baseball teams who are willing to spend the same amount of money, if not more. And there are far too many baseball teams that understand how to build a roster to win. And unfortunately, I don't see the Yankees doing that.
It becomes an issue of being okay with where you are and then a state of complacency. And whether that's on purpose or just like naive, I can't sit here as a fan first and foremost and believe that Hal Steinbrenner is content with what's been put out there in the product the last few years, or really since 2018, the product that's been put out there. Say what you want about Joe Girardi. He's a way different manager than Aaron Boone is. And something needs to change in that respect, because Aaron Boone is the type of guy who's always going to defend his players, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think you, as a manager, you have to defend your squad, because then it starts to become an issue in the locker room if you don't, in the clubhouse if you don't. So say what you want about that, and he's not going to change. Boone's not going to change. He's always going to be that type of guy who's going to stick up for his guys, and even if it's not the right thing to do, and if you should call some guy out or hold him accountable, Boone's not going to do that. And we've seen that multiple times. So you have to wonder, like, if Boone doesn't go, Cashman's not going anywhere, because Cashman just spends money, and Hal lets him spend money, and Hal's not going anywhere. And Hal has his thoughts on how to manage this team and how to own this team and how to keep the revenue flowing in, because he's got the Yankees fans around his finger, just wrapped around. You have to wonder, is this like a downfall of this franchise?
I think a couple of things. I think Unfortunately, I think that the Joe Girardis of the world no longer exist in baseball, and if they do, they are on their way out. I think the type of managers that will, air players out in front of the media, it just doesn't exist anymore. I don't think players, appreciate that the way that people are now. It doesn't work, right? But I think the lack of accountability that Aaron Boone has held for this team has clearly moved over to the field. The errors in the field this year and the mistakes that were made mentally were just unacceptable. And, we could count a million things that have happened this year where it was like, how does that even happen, on a baseball field, like for high school, let alone Major League Baseball. And I think that lack of accountability that you see in the media, I think it might translate over to the locker room behind closed doors, because you don't see it happen with other teams as often as it happens with the Yankees. We could go through a laundry list of things, but it's just, I think until there is some sort of top-down change, we are just going to see the same product in a just slightly different way year after year after year. And, I think bringing in a different manager might switch that up, but I think you have to clean out Cashman and Boone in order to really see a change, because you are just going to get another Boone copycat with whoever you decide to hire if you let him go, if Cashman is still there. And I think that until we see that, I think we are going to be seeing some of the worst times of Yankees baseball. There is a good chance that we go another 5+ years without seeing a championship for this Yankees team, because of the fact that they are just so stubborn and stuck in their ways. They refuse to change. And I think it's unfortunate, but I think it's where we are right now as an organization.
You have to wonder if last year was the year. And even then, you can blame Boone in some situations with, at least we'll say this postseason. I would argue that against the Red Sox, Boone had a really good series. He managed.
I would argue this postseason he did. I think he did well.
Because I think the issue with him is he's a very analytical guy, but is he an analytical guy, or is it just coming from the top where he has to be an analytical guy? We don't know what goes on behind the scenes in these pregame, meetings, and where they prep and where they do their scouting reports, and we don't know what happens behind the scenes in the clubhouse and what he's being told to do. He's been called a puppet manager before, and I'm not gonna approve or deny that statement, because that's not my place to do, because I don't know what goes on behind closed doors in those administrative meetings. But he is notoriously a guy who relies on analytics to make his decisions. And that has been one of the things that Yankees fans in particular are done with. And I would argue to say, like you said, that he managed with his gut this postseason. So I would give him props for that. Give credit when credit's due. But obviously it still wasn't enough. So like you said, now you have to go to the next step higher, which is who's building this team? Well, that's Brian Cashman. And while he had a solid trade deadline, we were on air during the trade deadline at ESPN. So that was a big day for us. I would say within the last 30 minutes, got all this bullpen action, Bednar and Mark Leiter and whatever, everything that he's done. Yeah, everything that he's done with the bullpen, and it looked solid. And then the next 2 weeks of Yankees baseball was the most abysmal baseball I think we had seen all season. Every single piece that Cashman had acquired had contributed to a Yankees loss in one way, shape, or form. And so then now you're sitting there saying, what is going on? So it's tough to put Boone with all the blame, but he's the manager, and that's going to happen. He's the representative of the team, and the blame is going to go to him. I 100% agree saying it comes from the top down. But again, if you're in a state of complacency and Hal doesn't see a problem with what's going on because you're bringing money in, it's a business, it's always been a business, nothing changes, Boone sticks around, you're going to see fans start to stop showing up. I think you're going to start to see issues. And it's not something that the Yankees franchise has had in a very long time, or really ever, where fans really start to lose sight of the mission. And there's a lot of people ready to give up on this team.
Yeah, I think this is the first time that you and I will disagree on something. I don't think that fans are going to stop showing up. Unfortunately, I think that if there was ever a time to do it, it's come and gone.
Right.
And I think that people will always be buying into the idea that this year is our year, right? Yankees fans will always buy into the product of what was and, the history of the Yankees and what we have been. And I think that unfortunately that will never change. You will never see a half empty Yankee Stadium unless the product on the field is so bad that it forces the hands of fans. And I don't think that it'll ever be like that. And it's unfortunate because I think that's what it would take for a full reset from this organization. But I mean, the season just ended for us, but looking forward to next year, you're going to have Boone, you're going to have Cashman back in the same spots. And so then now it turns to, okay, what does next year's roster look like? You are most likely going to let Paul Goldschmidt walk. You're going to let Trent Grisham walk. Who knows what's going to happen with Bellinger? So now you have a hole at first base. You have Ben Rice, but Ben Rice is not a good defensive first baseman, nor is he a good defensive catcher. You have a third baseman that can't hit. You have 3 left-hand hitting catchers, one of which can't play defensively, and the other 2 which are not good offensively. You have Anthony Volpe, who is basically on his last leg with Yankees fans. He was awful during the regular season. He was semi-good during the Red Sox season, but arguably had a terrible postseason as well. Severely regressed from the last couple of years. You have a bullpen which is going to let guys like Tim Hill potentially leave. You're going to have to replace arms. The only thing that you have going into next year that you can feel good about is Aaron Judge, which you've had for the last 6 years, 7 years, and felt great about and had nothing around him. And the starting rotation, which, should be good. But, I mean, you look at the first 2 games of the series, 3 games of the series against the Blue Jays, and you're like, maybe not. I don't trust Rodon in the playoffs. I don't feel good about Luis Hill being healthy at all during the season. Cam Schlittler, great, awesome. That was 2 games. He's rookie year. Like, you have all of these question marks in the starting rotation. Yes, if everyone is at their best with Garrett Cole at the helm and you have Max Fried, who, by the way, looked terrible in the postseason. Yes, you should have a good rotation, one of the best in baseball. But again, should. What happens when the actual piece of paper that you see goes out and plays on the field, right? And so it's worrying to me that the holes that you might need to plug won't be able to get plugged because of what you already have. Are you going to go get another catcher to replace Austin Wells? No. Well, you need to find a backup catcher that's either a switch hitter or a right. You can't have 3 left-handing catchers. Are you going to go find a first baseman? If you do, does that mean that Ben Rice now doesn't have another spot to hit in the lineup again because Giancarlo Stanton's your DH because he can't play the field because he's made of glass? What are you going to do in the outfield? You have Jason Dominguez, who sat on the entire bench for the playoffs. Is he going to take a step forward defensively, or is he going to be a liability in left field again, and you're going to have to platoon him? So I think there's just as many question marks going into this offseason as there were last year. And I don't trust this front office to make the right decisions to help take that next step forwards. I felt like what we did in the offseason this year was great, right? We took what we would have spent on Juan Soto and moved it into Max Fried, into Cody Bellinger, into all these guys. I'm concerned that they are not going to be willing to spend any exorbitant amount of money on players this offseason. Also, on top of that, this pool of players that are entering into free agency is not that good. Kyle Tucker is arguably the best player entering free agency this year, and he has been god-awful in the playoffs this year and in years prior. And that's the last thing you need is another guy that can't perform in the playoffs.
Exactly.
So it's very worrying to see where this team goes moving forward and what this front office does from an organizational standpoint in this offseason and then going into next year.
And it honestly, at this point, kind of just looks like a year-to-year operation instead of a plan for your future operation, which it used to be. Because, Volpe was one of the prized prospects of this team. Supposed to be the next Derek Jeter, say what you want to say about that. It's like just hyped up to the max. Jason Dominguez, same thing, hyped up to the max. Spencer Jones is still rotting away in just rotting and hyped up to the max. the Yankees have at this point like a prospect development issue, and it's just wasting what could be the next 5 years other franchise where you could be very competitive. I'm not asking for a World Series every single season. That's not sustainable, and that doesn't happen. But the Dodgers are kind of doing it right now. So, that's really the blueprint, and they do a good job at what they do. They develop. They don't just develop, though. They go and get the heavy hitters. They are in every single free agent bid I'm sure they're going to be in the Kyle Tucker bid some way or another, and I'm sure the Yankees are going to be outbid in one way or another. They could have had Yamamoto. They could have had. I mean, they could have had all these pieces, and they don't. They don't plan ahead. They don't plan for their future. And this isn't a team that's been in a situation where they have to rebuild and actually plan for the future. They've been consistently making the playoffs, except for that one season. And they've been consistently over 500. You can't really ask for more other than now taking the next step, which they haven't taken the next step. And it does seem like a year-to-year operation now where at the end of each season, there is new holes in addition to the ones that you kind of patched up. Like, it's like fixing a house, but not really fixing the house. You have a hole in the wall or you have a leak, and instead of calling the plumber to do it for you, you look up on YouTube how to do it yourself. You don't do it the right way, so it's still leaking, and then eventually the pipe's going to explode. And then you're really going to have to call the plumber. You're going to have to fix the entire, piping system of your house, and it's going to take a lot of money, a lot of time, and you won't be able to turn the water on for a little bit.
And I think that, you see that year after year with this organization, and I think you'll see it again next year because, I'm sorry, but Ryan McMahon is not the best long-term answer at third base. And I think Yankee fans ignored his offensive setbacks because of the fact that he was a great defensive third baseman. And we had guys like Yorby Vivas who were terrible at both playing third base, right?
Yeah.
But I think in a full season, that's going to be the next target for Yankee fans is Ryan McMahon can't hit a baseball. What are we doing? And it's concerning for the fact that we are wasting away Aaron Judge and Garrett Cole's prime years. And, I don't want to look, too far down the road, but when they're gone, what is this organization going to look like? Where is that next great player going to come from? Oh, and by the way, the CBA is coming up soon. If they put a salary cap on teams, we're cooked. We can't develop prospects. We have no farm system. We hold on to prospects for way too long. We don't trade them for the right guys. This entire team is made up of consistently getting free agents to come here. I have no faith that Spencer Jones and George Lombard are going to come up and be the next great Yankees. And, they put a salary cap on it, and that's just going to expose another flaw within this organization. And I think it just goes back to the fact that it's almost like they realized that they were doing wrong too late, and they just dug their heels in and said, fine, we're just going to go with it. And it's unfortunate and it sucks, but we are looking at an organization that will consistently run out of just above mediocre players and patch them together with one great one in Aaron Judge and just hope that it works. And, I think they did a better job at, finding different style players to surround Aaron Judge with this year. But I mean, you basically have 4 or 5 of the exact same players. And it feels like every year that's the same thing. I thought when we brought Jazz Chisholm in, it would have, brought a guy that was a get on base, steal bases kind of guy. And yes, he was a 30-30 this year, but I think he considers himself a power hitter at this point. And you thought Volpe was going to be your leadoff guy, right? Moving into the future. He was going to be that guy who was going to get on base, steal 30 bases a year. And he can't do that. And it's concerning that we look in the mirror every year as Yankee fans and just see the same thing looking back at us. And it's really, really worrying for what the future of this organization is going to look like, not only next year, but moving forward past the Aaron Judge and Garrett Cole years.
Well, at least you have the Giants, right? At least you have the Giants.
I hope. At this point, all I have is the Knicks.
And listen, the Knicks are in a similar situation where it's like now you're waiting for them to take the next step too, and they haven't taken the next step. I think they're going to get there though.
They better, because at this point I feel like they're the Yankees where it's like championship or bust this year. You have
and
two teams.
It's like who do you look to? It's Jalen Brunson. He's there under the team.
you have no Tatum this year. You have no Halliburton this year. Like, if you don't make it to the NBA Finals, I would say it's a failure of a season. So they better find a way to step it up. They have arguably the best team they've had in years. So lock in Knicks. Like, it's time. It better happen. Like, I am fully expecting the Knicks are making a run to the championship this year, and they better, because the way that the Giants have been playing and what the Yankees did to me, I need it.
It's this feels more so like a therapy session at this point than even a sports talk show, because you're so spot on. I mean, and I think majority of fans, and not even just fans, analysts in general, are looking at the same picture, and it's almost as if, like, we'll talk Yankees specifically at this point. It's almost as if, like, there's this delusional sunshine and rainbows world that they're in their clubhouse, and it's everybody else that can see it's not that, except for them.
And it's just, again, it's this idea that, like, there's no accountability. It doesn't seem like I mean, like, I love Jazz Chisholm, and I'm just using him as an example because it's the first thing that came to mind. But, the lack of accountability when he was like, yeah, I'll do it again, when he got picked off at first, like, and him turning his back in the locker room to the meet, like, again, it's this lack of buy-in, this lack of, I was talking to someone the other day. This is a perfect example. And they were like, I love Aaron Judge as a player. I don't necessarily know if he's the best captain. And I was like, I don't necessarily agree with that statement, but I don't disagree with it. And if you look back at, like, Derek Jeter, right? He was surrounded by all of these Hall of Famers. So of course, they were winning championships because of how good that team was as a whole, not just him. But Jeter was the kind of guy that every single time he went on the field, whether it was the postseason, whether it was the regular season, he was going to die to win. And even Aaron Judge, you don't see that anymore. Like, these guys, there's so much else going on that they're not, the players are not going to put everything on the line to win. And it doesn't seem like that may ever come back to the Yankees again. And, I miss that competitiveness and that fire from guys where it was like, I will do whatever it takes to win. And when I lose, I hate it more than I love winning. And, like, it's not there anymore. And it sucks to see.
It's disappointing too, because Judge and Boone get along for the same reason. They're very hands-off individuals. Judge is not the type of guy who's going to go up to a teammate in the dugout after he doesn't run out. Let's say, whatever, Jazz doesn't run out of ball because he thinks it's out, right? And then instead of being on second, now you're on first and not in scoring position. Jeter arguably would, whether he would do it in the dugout, probably not, but behind the scenes, maybe confront his teammate and say, hey, let's go, run the ball out. Judge is never going to do that. I mean, as far as we know, he's not going to do that. And maybe by a shot in the dark he has behind the scenes in the clubhouse, but I very highly doubt it. And he's not the type of guy who's going to go up to his teammates and hold them accountable. He's a happy for everyone. Everyone is perfect, or not perfect, but everybody matters. Everybody, you're just doing the best you can. Like, that's kind of how he is.
And I think he's a great leader in terms of, he's the right captain for the New York media and the way that he handles himself and the presence that he is. But I just think, and I don't even know if it's just necessarily a Judge thing or a Yankees thing, and if it's just baseball in general, but the fire to win and, like, that want to just every single day win a game, like, it almost seems like it's just not there anymore. And I don't know if it's just baseball as a whole or if it's the Yankees as a whole, whatever it is. But that kind of leadership and that kind of energy just doesn't seem like it's there. And I think that translates, like you said, across the boot and across to the front office of the New York Yankees, where it's like the motto was always, right, World Series or bust for the Yankees. It was like the expectation was we make it to the World Series. And now it's just like, it seems like the motto is, let's just be good, right? We don't need to be great. Let's just be good.
Let's just try and stay above 500.
Yeah. Like, I would argue that they're probably happy with the fact that we won a round in the postseason, right? We beat the Red Sox in wild card, and it's a semi-successful year. For me, it's a failure. But for the front office, it might be a semi-successful year because, again, they were good enough. They were good enough to just buy another year, to move one step further down the road. And it's unfortunate, but I think that's just the way that everyone's bought into this organization from top to bottom.
And I wish we could end on a positive note. I really do. But I mean, the only positive note I could think is that I don't even know. There really isn't much of a positive note with this franchise.
And I think that, we talk again in, 6 to 8 months now and see what happens in the offseason and where they go. And maybe there is a positive note, right? Maybe they do make those moves. But I think the way that the season ended truly left a sour taste in every Yankee fan's mouth. And I think it was, again, just a lack of heads up baseball in the field, a lack of offense, a lack of pitching. And, you got beat by a better team, but you didn't even look competitive outside of the one game. And, I think that maybe this changes, maybe it doesn't. But the way that it ended was just it went out with just such a fizzle that it left such a bad taste in my mouth as a Yankees fan. And thank God my Friday got brightened up by the Giants. But this is something that I will be thinking about and talking about for a couple more weeks at least before I finally move past it and look forward to next year, because it felt like this year was just an organizational failure. And it's unfortunate because I feel like I've said that multiple times in the last 5 years. But it'll be interesting to see what they do this offseason and where they move. And I hope come opening day next year, I have a more positive outlook on this team, but I don't know where they're going to go from here.
It's tough. It's gray. It's dim. There's so many question marks. Connor, you got anything else for us before we wrap this up?
No, all my teams suck. My life is miserable. I don't know. I don't know what to do at this point. It's got to be next.
How's VT doing?
No, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. The football season was over before it even started. We fired our head coach 4 games of the year. We're cleaning house. We're starting from scratch. We have a search committee going now for a general manager and a new head coach for football. It is awful. I wish I was at Hofstra right now where I didn't have a football team, so I didn't have to worry about this.
Listen, I don't have to deal with that. We're in the volleyball is ridiculously good era where I don't even watch volleyball, but I know it's good. Soccer is good.
It's basketball season here now.
Basketball, yeah. I mean,
our men's team is actually looking really good this year for Tech. We got the student Neo from Greece who's supposed to be like arguably the best international prospect. We built a really solid team. Like, there's a good chance we make a decent run in March Madness this year, but yeah, no, it's awful over here. Football died like week 2. We lost to Old Dominion. They're an FCS team. We lost to Old Dominion. Not only did we lose, we got blown out.
Yeah, it's a nice hat you have there, though. What's that hat?
Yeah, I appreciate that. A little DNR shout out. Love the boys. Yeah.
Hopefully we get them on here one day.
Yes, that would be great. I'm sure Rick will be more than happy to hop on and chat with you when he has free time from his 47,000 jobs that he does and dealing with the Islanders and all of that. But yeah. I appreciate you having me on. It was a lot of fun. This was a great time. I really enjoyed it.
I have missed our group for months now. I miss the office. I miss our sports chats, and I miss everybody there. So it's really great to do this, and we're going to do it again for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You could have me on anytime. It's been awesome. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Connor Levinson, ESPN New York Intern Summer 25, Virginia Tech graduate student, and a friend of the program.
Thanks for everything, Gabby.
Thank you so much, Connor. All right, guys, that is going to wrap up the show. Make sure that you hit me on the socials. You'll see it down on your screen as it's rolling across. What a show. We're going to hope to have some guests on in the future again. Connor's just awesome to talk to. He knows what he's talking about, and he's right on, because it's a depressing time for New York sports. And so hopefully this brightened up the mood a little bit. I know we talked mostly just New York sports in general and not, the other things going on, but big week for the NFL. Huge night for 2 series in the ALDS, NLDS. Both series are tied to a piece right now. So it's going to be huge. And we're going to talk about all of it and more. I'll see you same time, same place, 5 p.m. You can hit me up on the socials. They're coming down on your screen right now. Follow me there. Let me know what you want to hear next. And it's always a pleasure being here, talking some sports. I will catch you next time. Thanks for watching.